Hi everybody, I'm Chris G, and welcome to another edition of the Habs360 podcast featured on allhabs.net. On this week's episode that aired on May 11th, along with my co-hosts Dan Kramer and Rick Stevens, we recapped the Canadiens' first-round loss against the Ottawa Senators. I asked Rick the question that a lot of Habs fans have been asking themselves. Was Carey Price the problem in the series?
I think that Carey Price certainly was a focus throughout the season, but throughout the playoffs. But I think that it's far too simplistic just to focus on the goaltending. I went back and I reviewed every one of the goals against, and there were plenty of them. And very honestly, I could fault Carey Price on one of the goals in Game 1. And for the rest, I don't know that he stood much of a chance. It's what happens in this city. The focus is on the net. People don't tend to look elsewhere. Don't tend to analyze what's going on with the other players on the ice in the Canadian zone. And I think when as I said, it's far too simplistic, and if you're going to look at any reason that the Canadiens didn't win, you have to look at the other end as well. And I'm not on I'm not one of the folks that said that would say that Craig Anderson had a great series. Personally, I don't think he did. He didn't have much to do, matter of fact. But with the Canadiens scoring less than 2 goals a game, Carey Price didn't have any support. Peter Budaj didn't either, although Budaj was you can certainly see where the soft goals came in there. But I think to focus on the goaltending is just far too simplistic in my estimation.
Sure, and I agree with that to an extent. I do think that you can't hang this series on Carey Price. Absolutely not. There was a lot of things that have been going poorly in the Canadiens game for the past month, even going into that last little slump during the regular season that continued or maybe were amplified during the series against the Senators. But at the same time, for this team to take that next step that a lot of guys are talking about today during their end-of-season interviews, to take the next step and become more than just a regular season team or more than just a first round of the playoffs team, Carey Price is going to have to be better than he was in that first round. Goaltending is the easiest position to blame in hockey. It's sometimes the easiest position to credit as well. And while I agree with you, Rick, that Craig Anderson wasn't challenged much on a game-to-game basis, he did face a lot of rubber, a lot of shots on the outside, a lot of not so much traffic in front of him. But of the two, I think if you rated the goaltending performances, there's a huge disparity between how Craig Anderson played and how Carey Price played. And Craig Anderson was there, even if he wasn't tested very, very much or with very difficult high percentage shots. He was there when he needed to be. And it seemed on Carey Price's end, in the games that got out of hand, so we're talking about that 6-1 loss that he was in net for. It seemed that when things started to go poorly for Carey Price and for his defense in front of him, it sort of snowballed from there. Once a game was out of reach, there was no coming back from Montreal. And that's not something we saw for most of the regular season. This was a team that was resilient, that did come back, and they just didn't have that, whether it was the goaltending, the defense, or even the forwards. Like you mentioned, they weren't scoring a lot of goals. The entire team just didn't show that resiliency, starting from Carey Price.
And a lot of the tension started in game number 1, where Canadiens took 50 shots on Craig Anderson. Anderson only let 2 goals by. And then Carey Price facing 31 shots, he allowed 4 goals. So that's when it started with, whether it be the fans or the doubts in the media, is on almost half the shots, Price allowed double of the goals. And Rick, when you said that we can't blame the series on Carey Price, I totally agree. I've been on record here on Habs360 saying that I am a Carey Price fan, but I've had my doubts since the game against Buffalo, where they got officially clinched the playoff spot. So I'm not off the Carey Price bandwagon. I'm not saying he should get traded. I think he's a good number 1 goalie, but he certainly has put doubts in my mind. And I'm sort of trying to understand the people who are saying, well, is Carey Price the number one goalie that we always wanted? I certainly do have doubts, and I don't blame anybody having doubts that Carey Price is not the goalie that we wanted. And there's 2 games this season that I've pinpointed Carey Price as the cause of the team losing. That was the game against Toronto, where he allowed 3 goals in 4 shots. So that, I think, totally the Canadiens had no chance of coming back for that game. And even game 1 of this series against the Ottawa Senators, he didn't allow bad goals, but I still think Carey Price didn't step it up, and I'm putting the blame for game number 1 loss on the Canadiens goaltender, number 31. But go ahead.
I think that again we could take the microscope and just focus on the goaltending, but it really it ignores some major problems that the Canadiens experienced, as Dan said, not just in the playoffs, but going down the last month of the season. They were a different team, and even when you look at that the 50 save performance, if you look just at the by Craig Anderson, if you look just at the score sheet and you compare shots and you compare the number of goals that go in, you're ignoring the quality of those shots, you're ignoring the scoring chances. And I don't think that the Canadiens, the Canadiens did not take advantage of the weaknesses that Craig Anderson has. Craig Anderson is a big goalie. He doesn't move all that well. Doesn't move laterally all that well. He doesn't skate all that well. He has problems with his feet. He wears those really stiff pads, so he has problems with rebounds. And when you can take 150 shots from the perimeter. Craig Anderson's going to stop them. What the Canadiens did in Game 2 was get to the copious number of rebounds that Anderson was giving up. They didn't do that in any of the other games. So the number of shots is really irrelevant when you're shooting them at a big fixed target. And I think, on the other hand, the Senators and some great coaching by Paul McLean exploited the weaknesses in the Canadian zone. The shots were coming, and the shots that were beating Carey Price were from the slot. Were with a lot of traffic. The Senators did what they had to do to exploit that poor defensive zone coverage that the Canadiens had throughout the playoffs and had throughout the end of the season.
Yeah, let me say, like you, Chris.
No question about that. The young guys, no question about that. Future looks very bright. Got more coming up. Score! They're all going through Budai now. That's too bad.
All right, sorry about that, Dan. I just wanted to bring up here that was Peter Budai in game number 5 against the Ottawa Senators. I just found out less than under an hour ago that Carey Price, his lower body injury was a second-degree MCL sprain, and that requires a 6-week recovery, approximately. So Carey Price realistically was out for the rest of the playoffs, and then Peter Budai didn't put the performance that the Canadiens needed in game number 5 either.
No, he didn't, and this goes back to the point I was going to make, is that I'll go on record. I'm a Price fan. Whenever I make a critical comment of Carey Price, and whenever anyone makes a critical comment about Carey Price, see him as a group of Carey Price defenders who are ready to jump all over them. And I think Carey Price is a great goaltender. There's a quote that just came from his end-of-season interview, which from Carey Price says, "I honestly believe I can win a Stanley Cup. I think I have the ability and the mentality to do that." And I agree. I think Carey Price is a goaltender who hopefully will win a Stanley Cup during the course of his career. And And whether it's Carey Price or Peter Budaj in nets, I don't think that was the issue at the end of the day for the Montreal Canadiens in this series. And without even getting to Craig Anderson, I don't think, yes, he played a great series. He was a very good goaltender for Ottawa, but I don't think that was the number one issue either. I think the issue, and it's been an issue really all season for Montreal, which was masked by some very good play for most of the season, but is the group of defensemen on the Montreal Canadiens. I don't think this is a defense, whatever goaltender's behind them, that can win a Stanley Cup. I think it's moving in the right direction. You have a lot of good young prospects who are coming up, who are going to fill in some of the gaps in the system. We saw, I guess, some good and some bad of Jared Tenorti in his very, very early debut of his career this season. Nathan, I like Greg Patterin. But the way Montreal's defense is built currently, it's not built to help support or protect any goaltender, whether it's Budaj, whether it's Price. You don't have the size and toughness and strength that you need on the back end. You don't have the mobility. You don't have the shutdown guys. You're really missing a lot of sort of key elements that a championship team requires on defense. Look at the size comparison between Ottawa and Montreal. Ottawa's back end is full of guys who are 6'4", 6'5", who are tough to play against, who make standing around in front of the net difficult to do. And Montreal didn't get around the net that much, and you can credit Ottawa's defense for part of that. Whereas Ottawa definitely did their homework on Montreal and their defense. You saw they knew that faceoffs were a problem for Montreal. They called them on that. They knew that they could challenge Montreal's defensemen, and they did that over and over again on the goals they did score. So I don't think it's a question of Peter Budaj playing poorly. I don't think it's a question of Carey Price playing poorly. Those are aspects to it. But at the end of the day, I have confidence in either goaltender starting a game in Montreal. What they need to do is make sure the players in front of them are the right players to protect the net and to give them some help.
I hope you enjoyed the sample of this week's episode of the Habs360 podcast. We think that Carey Price was not the reason that the Habs lost against the Senators. Want to know the reason we think they lost? Listen to the entire episode by clicking on the link on this page. A reminder that you can follow me on Twitter at ChrisG1980. You can follow Rick at all_Habs and Dan at Dan Kramer Habs. Next week's episode, that will be also the season finale. Habs360 will conduct its post-mortem as we will review the Canadiens' 2013 season. It will air live on Saturday, May 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Follow us on Twitter at Habs360 for details. Enjoy your week and your playoff hockey.